Hello, welcome to another episode of Cotton. And today, my guest is Ravi Chopra, who is a very eminent environmentalist. He hails from Uttarakhand, Dehradun, and he was educated here in India and abroad. And he was famous for a report prepared in 1982. That was the status of India's environment as citizens report. And 4 decades, almost 4 decades ago, when in this part of the country we're discussing environment, environment protection, environment degradation, where all the time we're speaking about the status of India's environment, a citizens report. But at that time, I didn't know the person who was behind this preparation of this report. And today, he is here with us. And of course, though he may not remember me, I met him twice. Once in Delhi and another, I think, once in Delhi and maybe again in Dehradun. Were you there in Dehradun when we were discussing this BZA meeting in that?
Yes, I
Yes,
was there.
you were
That
there,
was
huh?
2023,
Yes,
June.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. I was there. So great. Now, it's because I didn't speak in those meetings much, so that is why maybe I was not noticed by him. But then he was very much noticed. He presided over many actually sessions there. Now I'm so thrilled and I'm feeling so great that I could host you today for the audience of this
I'm,
region.
I have to thank you for inviting me.
No, no. Great. Now,
I have a number of friends in the Northeast,
really, who are these friends?
all over the Northeast.
No, all over the
Well,
Northeast.
there are all over the Northeast.
Okay, great.
There is Mr. Yeah. Okay,
Mister?
go ahead.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Well, I
Great.
have a lot of friends. I mean, Sanjay Hazarika
Oh,
is one of
Sanjay.
my
You know
close
Sanjay.
friends.
Okay, Sanjay, you know. Sanjay, I know him very well, a very good friend of mine. Okay, great. Now, coming straight to the issue, actually, if you could give us a brief overview of this Sardham highway project.
Okay. The Char Dham Pariyojana, as it is called, was announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi at an election rally in Dehradun in December 2016. The elections were in February.
Okay.
It came as a big surprise to everybody because nobody had ever raised a demand for these kinds of roads. It was said to be an all weather road so that people could go to the four shrines, the first at Yamunotri in the Yamuna Valley, the second at Gangotri in the Bhagirathi Valley, the third at Kedarnath, which is the Mandakini Valley, and the fourth at Badrinath, which is in the Alaknanda Valley. Later, these two streams, the Alaknanda and the Bhagirathi, join at a place called Devprayag. And geographically, Ganga begins at Devprayag. Okay? So, the proposal was to build all weather roads to these four shrines, that the roads are going to be 10 meters wide, tarred surface, which means which could carry traffic. We call it carriageway. So they would have a carriageway of 10 meters, 4 lanes. In addition, there was a fifth road, which was essentially the widening of an existing national highway, and that was in the Kumaon side of the state, in the eastern side of the state, from Tanakpur in the foothills to the town of Pithoragarh. From Pithoragarh, it would connect to the border, um, which was a defense road. So all these three roads, the Tanakpur Pithoragarh road, the Rishikesh Badrinath road, and the Rishikesh Gangotri road, are feeders to border roads. So beyond there, the where the Char Dham shrines end, the roads continue to the border. The Kedarnath and the Yamunotri roads are not feeders to the defense, nor do they go up to the border. Okay. So the total length of this project was 889 kilometers. According to existing law, if you have a road that is more than 100 kilometers in length, you have to do an EIA. However, the government broke this 889 kilometer long project into 53 smaller projects so that none of them was close to 100 kilometers. And therefore, they avoided doing an EIA for this project. The projected cost of the project at the time was 12,000 crore rupees. Okay. And it was supposed to be completed, at least in 2016. The announcement was that it would be completed in 2 years. So that's the outline of the project.
Okay. So there was no public demand
No,
that there should be this a highway project connecting the four dhams, four religious places. So there is no public demand. It was suddenly announced in a meeting in Dehradun when the elections were approaching. Fine. That has become the modus operandi of this government. Now, how did you actually get involved in it? So when Supreme Court, there is a high powered committee formed by the Supreme Court and which was headed by you. So, what were the mandates of that high power committee, which was formed in 2019? So, what were the mandates?
yeah. Before I answer that, let me make one small clarification. There were already existing highways to all the four shrines. And from Tanakpur to Pithoragarh, there were highways, but they were not very wide. They certainly couldn't carry 4 lanes. They were meant for 2 lanes, but in some places they were narrower than that, and traffic would often have to was held up during the summer season when there was the tourist rush. Now, regarding my association with this project, I was in the US and there was a petition in the Supreme Court challenging the effort of the government to avoid doing an EIA. The petitioners had said that about 50 odd thousand trees were either being cut or had been cut, and that was proving to be a danger because landslides had taken place at a few places, and therefore they wanted a ruling from the NGT. They had first gone to the NGT. Well, the case ended up in the Supreme Court, and in September 2019, 19, the Supreme Court appointed a high-powered committee, and I was named to head it. Now, I was reluctant to take on this appointment because by then I had crossed well over 70 years. I had headed a Supreme Court committee earlier in after the 2013 disaster, and I was a bit reluctant to take on a new responsibility. But when I gave the matter enough thought and I spoke with some of the petitioners, um, expressing my reluctance, it was made fairly clear to me that look, we have to save the Himalayas. These highways are proving to be extremely dangerous for the environment and for the safety and security of the travelers on the highway. And that's when I decided, well, I think if I can help save the Himalayan environment, then all the 40 or 35, 36 years that I've put into um, environmental security in this area will have been useful. Okay. So that's when I accepted the appointment of the Supreme Court. Now, there's a very interesting aspect to this. The committee that the Supreme Court had nominated, I was the only person named in that committee. The rest were all officials or scientists, and scientists from X institute, scientists from Y department, engineer from this department. No one else was named.
But you were named.
I was named. Apparently, the way I had chaired that earlier committee had impressed the judge. And so I was named. And also the fact that I had studied at IIT, that always helps.
You studied IIT and then you had gone to a foreign university.
Yes,
You
I had
had
a PhD from abroad. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So, but then thing is, you were appointed in 2019, but then subsequently in 2022, you resigned from the committee. So
Yeah.
why did you resign from the committee?
Okay. The committee, by the time we got to writing the final report of the committee's findings, I had a lot of problems in handling the committee. By then, the committee size had actually swelled. The government had brought in, co opted some people, which I accepted. But what I was surprised was when the government insisted on including the DMs of all the districts through which the highways were passing. I had agreed to their being present because they are supposed to know a lot about their districts and the projects and so on. But the government officials in the committee insisted that they had voting rights.
They have voting rights.
Now, this was a major problem, which I think that the judiciary should look at in future. As part of the terms and conditions of the committee, it was said that in the case of a dispute on any aspect, on any recommendation, then that recommendation be put to a vote. Now, that was a decision announced by the court. I could do nothing about it. And unfortunately, I believe now, after this experience, that you cannot put scientific decisions based on science to a vote. You have to accept the hard facts and logic of science. That's it. So, handling the committee had become a very major problem. Now, the interesting thing was that we went out on field trips and we covered every inch of these 5 roads. We met villagers, we met people in the towns, we met the district administrations, we spoke with the engineers who were working. Everybody was heard. People had been filing complaints and so on. We held a special session for them. We said, please come to Dehradun and we'll give you a whole day. File your complaints in detail. We will review them and then we'll set a date to invite you. In those field trips, it was very interesting that the scientists on the team found number of flaws, many flaws that they pointed out. In fact, everybody agreed that the construction was not up to par. It was even suggested in the beginning that the engineers on the project were simply going on building, cutting the hills and laying the road. They were not building the retaining walls for security so that the slope doesn't collapse. And almost all of us recommended to the project engineers that why don't you build a stretch of the road, put up the retaining wall, and then move ahead. So the engineers did not accept that. In fact,
They were
the
not doing
engineers
that.
did not accept any recommendation of the committee, which they were supposed to follow. If you look at the terms and conditions of the court, which the court gave us, we were told to monitor, review, and recommend changes, which we did, but they never recommended it. They never accepted it. Okay? They just bulldozed their way through the project. Now, what came as a surprise was that on every issue, I was finally able to get a consensus on every issue from every member of the committee, except on one issue,
What is
which
that?
was how wide should the road be? The government had made a decision in 2012 that all national highways would be 10 meters carriageway, 4 lanes. We argued that in the mountain areas, the cutting of such a wide road is problematic. We have seen it all along the highway where the work has been done. And there are landslides, there are vulnerable zones. We have our own travels were interrupted time and again because there was a landslide. Okay. So we said that this is not a good decision. The road should be narrower. There should also be a footpath for, these are religious routes, and some people walk all the way to the shrines. So we said, you have not left any space for them. But again, despite all our recommendations, the engineers did not accept any of them. When it came to the road width, all the government representatives, whether they were scientists or whether they were officers, they all voted for the 10-meter width. There were 5 persons who said no, the width should be narrower. So I did the voting, 13 in favor of 10 meters, 5 against it. Now, everybody agreed that I had been very fair. Everybody who wanted to say anything, I had given them the chance to speak and speak at length, and they appreciated the draft report that I had prepared and given to them for review. They went through every single word. I had to read the entire report paragraph by paragraph and ask if you want any changes to be made. So, as to the maximum extent, there was complete democracy. Tumko jo bolna hai, bolo. If you don't like something that has been written, and most of us have another opinion, still your dissent will be recorded right on that page. I will not put it into some appendix that nobody is going to read. Okay, so your dissent will be recorded on that page. And if you read some of the correspondence between the members and myself, they are full of praise for the manner in which I had conducted these proceedings and the drafts that I had prepared. Many of them said, no one else could have put in so much work to prepare this in such a short time. And the report was finalized. The 13 people were given the option: you agree, you sign it; you don't agree, you don't sign it. But before at the end of the final revision of the report, one of my colleagues sent me a message one evening and said, I have enclosed a notification of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Please read it. I read it. It was dated March 23rd, 2018. It said that based on the experience of the past 5 years of building national highways in the mountain areas, we have come to the conclusion that this has been a disaster in the mountain areas. And then they say a few more sentences and they add that therefore the width of the roads in the mountain areas should be restricted to 5.5 meters. That's called an intermediate width. Who were these people? These were engineers from the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways Planning Division. It was their recommendation that if you have only so much traffic, then you need this width is enough. I was shocked because nobody had ever mentioned that such a notification existed. This was kept hidden from us. It was kept hidden from the NGT. It was kept hidden from the Supreme Court. Nobody knew. So just like the subterfuge of avoiding an EIA by breaking the road length into 53 projects, this was another subterfuge. So I circulated that notification to the entire team, And I said, if anybody wants to change their vote, please circulate your decision to everybody in the committee, and then I will change your vote. Interestingly, nobody changed their vote. Okay. And then I finalized the report, and in the report, I put in my own dissent, where I wrote about how the vote was taken and what was the vote, etc. At the end of that section, I put in my dissent, and I said in very strong words that I think that this is a wrong decision, that the mountains are incapable of bearing so much cutting and widening. Now you have a report of the ministry itself, and that is the width that we should go with. Okay. I sent the copy to the secretary of the committee, and there was, जिसको हिंदी में कहते हैं बवाल हो गया, an outburst. No, you can't do this. I said, of course I can. I gave all of you the freedom to express your dissent, and I have included every one of your dissent. My dissent will also go in. Nobody can keep my dissent out. So then the secretary called me back and said, sir, I cannot get this report printed. The government of Uttarakhand, I belong to the Uttarakhand cadre. The government has ordered me not to get the report printed. I said, fine. Just put it down in writing and send it to me. I got his response. I got the report printed at my own expense.
You got it printed on your own expense?
55,000 rupees. And I had it delivered straight to the Supreme Court. I was supposed to send the report to the Ministry of Environment, and they were supposed to hand over to the court, but I circumvented that and had it delivered straight to the judge. More consternation. How can you do that? You can't do that. I said, I've done it. So the case came up for hearing after a few weeks, and the judge said that I've read the entire report, and I have read the dissenting piece. I've gone through the notification, and therefore there is no case. It's very clear. That's the rule, that's the law of your own government, and you have to follow it. So he said 5.5 meters width, that's it.
Great.
After that, I wrote to the chief engineer of the project, and I said, look, that's what the Supreme Court has said. And they have said that this will be even what you have done earlier, you have to now limit it to 5.5 meters. You have to put in a footpath. You have to plant trees on one side. And I said, you please revise the design of the project and submit the design. The design will be reviewed by the committee, and then you can go ahead. But it didn't work out like that. He was anyway not going to follow anything I said. After that, there was a lot of pressure put on me to hold a meeting. And I said, yes, I will hold a meeting once I get the report I have asked for. I have asked for new design. And what is it that we are going to review if there's...
Without the report.
Yeah, we are not going to review the old project. We've done that. So one thing led to another, and then what was interesting that in the court, just before the hearing, a day or two before the hearing, the Ministry of Defense had filed an affidavit. And in their affidavit, they had said that we want a 7-meter width because defense equipment has to go up to the borders. In the court, the Solicitor General, Mr. Tushar Mehta, said to the judge, yes, sir, we are also willing for a narrower road. The Defense Ministry has recommended 7 meters. The dissenters are saying that they want 5.5 meters. Let us agree to 7 meters. It's not much of a difference. It's just 1.5 meters. But the judge was very clear. He says, no, your ministry's rule is 5.5 meters, and that's what's going to happen. Now, at the end of November, this happened in September. The judge's ruling was in September. November, the Ministry of Defense goes to the court and says, we want a 7-meter width. The judge says, what is the response of the Ministry of Road Transport? I'll hear this next week. Next week, during the hearing, the Ministry of Road Transport says 10 meters. This is 7 meters by the Defense Ministry. We have followed the ruling of the ministry saying 5.5 meters. So the judge said, okay, look, both the ministries belong to the government of India. Why don't you sit down and make one decision? Come to a decision. Only one width. You can't come up with two different recommendations. And he said to me as the chairman, said, you review the petition of the affidavit of the Ministry of Defense, call a committee meeting within 2 weeks, produce a report of that meeting in 3 weeks, and I will hear this case next month. That was after the holidays, winter holidays. So we worked round the clock to get this meeting done. At that meeting, in the middle of the meeting, a note was circulated from the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways saying that there had been a meeting that morning in the ministry with the representatives of the Ministry of Defense, and it was agreed by both the ministries that the road width should be 10 meters. So all the government people said, oh, fine, this is it. Now there's no need to hold this meeting. Isko band karo, hum ghar ja rahe hain. So I said, no. I have circulated an agenda, and we are going to follow through that agenda in this meeting. There's a lot of acrimony, and finally, I won't go into the further details. The government's team submitted their arguments for why it should be 10 meters. Now we were only 3 people asking for 5.5 meters. We submitted ours. The whole point of our disagreement with the 10-meter or 7-meter width was that if you have to cut a wide road, given the slopes, you need to have permission to cut a much larger width. It's called the right of way, and the government had obtained a right of way of 24 meters. When you cut 24 meters, you are chopping down a lot of trees. You are making the slopes very unstable. Many of the slopes are almost 90 degrees, 70, 80 degrees.
You cut 90-degree thing, you cut it.
Like this. Whereas the rule says that you will not cut a slope of more than 30 degrees. So our point was that this leads to much more environmental destruction, but even worse, the slope becomes unstable. And therefore, there'll be many more landslides. There had already been deaths on the road because of falling rocks and debris. And so we said, just imagine if the defense uh, troops and the equipment has to move to the border in a hurry, and you've got this massive landslide which you can't clear quickly. So we pushed for a disaster resilient road design, which was 5.5 meters. And we filed our report separately. The government filed its report separately. But in this case, we had a new judge now. And the new judge, um, the the previous judge, Rohinton Nariman,
Oh, Nariman was the previous judge.
yes,
He was a very good
he
judge.
called the meeting. He called the hearing, and at the hearing, he realized that the attorney general wasn't there. Now, in principle, the attorney general is a friend of the court, and the court can ask him or her, saying, I need your help. What is your recommendation on this issue? So he said, the attorney general is not here. I'm not going to hold the hearing.
No,
Why isn't he
who
here?
was the attorney general at the time?
I forget. K. Venugopal or
Ah,
Venkatraman, I
ah.
forgot.
Yeah, I know,
Venugopal.
now I remember. Yeah.
And so he was told that the prime minister had unexpectedly called him away for an urgent meeting, so he couldn't come to the court, and asked for a postponement to the afternoon. The judge said, sorry, my day book is full. I am not going to be able to hear this case later. Next week, we'll hear the case. The next week, there is no attorney general. Why? He sprained his foot again. He sprained his foot. So he said, okay, now I'll give you, he gave, I think, about 3 weeks or so. He said, I'll hear the case in next month. After that, there was no hearing. We pressed on the judge to hear the case before the recess, summer break. But he said he was full, he didn't have the time. He was going to retire in August or September. He never heard the case, and the case was later handed over to Justice Chandrachud. Chandrachud gave a decision in favor of the government, and by the time his judgment came, shortly thereafter, there had been that the wall of a glacier had collapsed, and there had been an avalanche.
Yes.
And you will recall that it
Yeah.
broke two dams, including a
Yes.
large project in which
Yes.
about 200 laborers
Yes.
were in the tunnel, and they never were found again. So after that, I wrote to the judge saying that I was going to resign because, based on your judgment, I don't see how I can help protect the environment of the Himalayan region. And that was the main reason why I had accepted the chairmanship. And since I wasn't going to be able to do that, I would rather not serve on this committee. So I resigned.
This is actually, I think, this everything has an aspect of storytelling. You have told the story so beautifully. I think it captures the essence of the thing. I'm so grateful to you. Now,
Thank you.
now again, there is an appeal. Perhaps this was the appeal. This was the order of Chandrachud in 2021, is it?
22.
22. Okay. So now after that, what is the present status of the whole thing?
Okay. There are two aspects that I can talk about. The road is still incomplete. Okay. The Rishikesh Badrinath road is collapsing at several locations, and we can say that certain locations have become permanently prone to landslides. Okay. So landslides take place every now and then over there. The government has to sometimes stop work for several days in order to repair that stretch. The road to Gangotri, work is still to be done in the last approximately 100 kilometers. That is the Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone. Everybody in our tours, field tours, everybody had agreed that the one road that had stayed in a nice condition was this Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone, that 100-kilometer stretch. And that was because the committee simply did not permit the engineers to begin any work over there. And we said, you have to follow the notification, which gives very clear directions on.
5 meters.
No, this was the Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone notification, which was also 2012, and that had said very clearly what can be done in that stretch, what can't be done in that stretch, and what may be done with due regulation. So we said you are going to do this work only by following these instructions, which meant that they couldn't really widen the road as they wanted to. Okay.
That was
So,
to Gangotri, is it?
excuse me?
That was to the Gangotri.
Yeah, that was to Gangotri. Yeah.
I had been to Gangotri. I traveled
So
on that road.
from Uttar Kashi to Gangotri, that
Yes.
100-kilometer stretch. So there, the government has now, of course, they don't care about what's there in any notification. And the government has revised its own original designs and plans. They've gone back on their word that they gave to the committee I headed, and they are bent on doing that 10 kilometers. But um, there's been opposition from the local people. There's been a lot of opposition from the local people, and now the Dharali incident has happened. Okay, so the place where the Dharali incident has happened is a very, very critical and sensitive location. There is a village called Jhala. Then there's an 11-kilometer stretch at the base of a mountain, on top of which is a glacier, from which I think 3 or 5 streams emanate. This slope of the mountain has a huge forest of very tall devdar trees, their age is in the hundreds of years. Local people say that this is the forest of Lord Bhairavnath, who is the protector of Gangotri. So they worship that area. Okay. Geologically, their presence is very critical, because if any landslide takes place in this area, the trees are so strongly rooted that they can hold back large boulders and rocks. You see that behind their pictures that we have taken. We told the engineers, we said, look, you can't build a wide road here. And you have to build a narrow road. Everybody agreed, even the government people. Finally, General VK Singh came to my home to discuss it with me. And I went to Delhi to his office. We had a discussion with the border roads head. And in that, they said, okay, we will not cut these 10,000 trees. They plan to cut 10,000 trees. 10,000.
Just imagine.
We will, as you have suggested, we will go for an intermediate width, and we will minimize the number of trees. The engineer in charge had told us that I will try to bring it down to as little as 1,500 trees. Certainly it will be less than 3,000, but I'll try and bring it down even further. Now they've already marked 6,000 trees for cutting. They go back on all their words.
No.
So that stretch is incomplete. The Badrinath road, though it has been taken up to Badrinath, I'm not sure if the last 35 kilometers has been done between Joshimath and Badrinath. But whatever they have done, they've had to repeatedly repair the stretches that are affected by landslides. The Yamunotri road conditions are so bad that they have themselves, the ministry has decided that the last 30 or 40 kilometers will be done only 5.5 meters cutting. That's their decision. The Kedarnath road has also had severe landslides. Okay, as that road in Kumaon from Tanakpur to Pithoragarh, they've got problems all over the place, and the road remains incomplete. That's one part. The second part is that Chandrachud had asked the high-powered committee to continue, and he had also appointed an oversight committee headed by a former judge of the Supreme Court, which would every 3 months would review the work done and monitor and review the work. That committee, after I quit, that judge was asked to head the high-powered committee also. So I'm told that I don't pay attention to what's happening over there, but I'm told that very few meetings take place, and they're quite irregular. So the committees are now more on paper than in fact, and the roads are incomplete. I'm sure that the cost of the road has gone well above 12,000 crores.
12,000 crores, more than 20,000 crores.
I'm sure of that.
Now, actually, whoever actually listens to this conversation, they will very well understand the whole thing and why there are frequent actually accidents, landslides, cloudburst, and all those kinds of things. And actually, while listening to you, even I am feeling as if the Himalayas actually are obstructing to it. They are not agreeing to it. That is why, though you see, and the people at times they worship trees, they worship rivers. They don't worship trees and rivers and mountains for nothing. There are some reasons behind it. Now, coming to the recent thing, that this uh, appeal, even by the BJP ministers and many other you see, renowned environmentalists, the recall of the Supreme Court judgment, Supreme Court verdict. So what is your actually call on that? What do you say on that?
Well, I certainly think that that decision needs to be reviewed because all the issues that we had raised, we had said you will have these kinds of problems. And particularly because we are now entering a period of climate change. And during climate change, the problems are going to become much worse.
Severe.
So now we have evidence of the last 3 years in particular, when climate change has begun to manifest itself in this area. And with all the evidence that is now available, it's high time that that decision was reviewed.
Great. Now, actually, after listening to you, and that now I know that actually you are the person who authored that status of India's environment
Yeah.
report,
I
citizenship,
was one of the 3 editors.
3 editors. And see, I call you, as you are not merely an environmentalist, I call you an environment philosopher and thinker. So now, before we conclude this interview, I'd like to know from your views. I would like to know from you that this contradiction, which we have been discussing time and again, the contradiction between development and environmental protection. What is your call on it? How do you see it? How this could be resolved? Is there any possibility? And here we have seen how the government machinery, how actually they bulldoze through decisions, same decisions.
Okay. The one thing I wanted to point out was that we are not just looking at this problem as a problem of environment. We are acutely aware that there are legitimate defense security needs. And we believe that defense needs have priority over everything else. I totally agree with that. But where there is a difference is that we are saying that you cannot build roads for defense purposes if they are going to have landslides, unexpected landslides, if the movement of the troops and the equipment can be stopped in an emergency, in a time of emergency. Therefore, for disaster resilience, also, we need narrower roads. So that has to be kept in mind. It's not just an environmental decision. Now, in answer to your question, I think, first of all, it's extremely important that existing rules, laws, notifications be respected. They are not made on a whim. So, for example, the EIAs. This is an extremely sensitive region. You know, all of us use this, make this statement every now and then, that the Himalayas are young mountains and they are very fragile, right? We don't really know how fragile they are, because when we look at them from a distance, there's this massive mountain range. It's huge compared to us, right? And we think they're a very solid mountain. The truth is that they are weak mountains. They have emerged from four faulted parts of the Earth's crust: the Himalayan frontal fault, the Shivaliks have emerged from there, the main boundary fault, the outer Himalayas have, or the lesser Himalayas have emerged from there, the Mussoorie, Nainital, and those places. You go further up north, you have the main central thrust, which is the most earthquake-prone region of the Himalayas. Okay, and you have the higher Himalayas emerge from there. And then finally at the border, you have the Indo-Tibet suture zone, after which comes the Tibetan Plateau. Okay. So each one of these ranges, they have risen from the, so, if these are four um, fault zones, this is the earth being pushed up through this. And as the earth has emerged from there, there's a lot of pressure acting on the rocks that are inside. Those rocks get crushed, they get broken. So they are faulted, they are fissured, they are fractured. So even though the material of the rock may be very hard, the rock itself may be very weak because it's got fractures in it. It's not properly, it's a jumble of rocks inside. So some rock is sitting like this, another is sitting like this,
It's not
third
a
is
very
sitting like
organic
that.
whole. It's not a
Not
very
like,
organic whole.
not an organic whole. And then each one of the discontinuities is a point of weakness, is a region of weakness. So that's one aspect, that the mountains themselves are weak, they're not strong. Second aspect, that what we have is that there are these mountains now, okay? And if you can see this, that's, let's say, one of the ranges, right? My southwest monsoon is coming from this direction, from the south. It meets the Shivaliks, about 1,000 meters average height. The low-lying clouds deliver their rain over there. Goes past that to the next range, which is about 2,000 to 2,400 meters. And higher clouds deposit their rain over there. And then the highest rain-bearing clouds escape and they go and hit the high Himalayas, and all the rest of the rain is deposited there. Beyond that is a cold desert. Okay. After that, there's hardly any rain. There's no rain. So each one of these ranges of weak mountains receives very focused rainfall, much higher than the surrounding valleys at times. And therefore, if any part of that weak mountain, the trees have been cut, the soil
Harder
erosion.
weekend. Harder weekend.
Yes. Okay. So these are very sensitive rocks, very fragile, and they can come apart anytime. And this is how we need to understand these mountains. So we absolutely need those EIAs. They have to be done. We can't avoid them, or we should not avoid them. Then you have these rules like the Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone notification. There was a lot of deliberation that took place on should it be done like this, should it be done like that. After deliberation, those rules have been written up. The Indian Road Congress, for years, for decades, this rule has stood that you should not cut slopes more than 30 degrees. Right? And in this program, all of these are being violated, and that should not happen in any construction in the Himalayan region. Now, we want disaster resilience, and you can have the best of, follow all your rules, but if your workmanship is poor, it doesn't help. And several places, some of the engineers, government engineers on our team, they themselves pointed out the poor quality of workmanship in several locations. Okay. In many places, we stopped and I asked the engineers who were working, the project people who were there, I would say to them, wait, why are you cutting it like this? Earlier, first of all, roads used to be cut by hand. Then came the time when we started using jackhammers. Now you're using these huge earth moving machines, these Pokeland machines that can do havoc. They deliver so much energy at a particular spot that even if the rock didn't have um, fractures before, with the hammering, they'll get fractured.
Even actually, when you imagine, when you think about it, it hurts. It actually physically hurts us. The cutting of huge portion of hills like this, it's no supremacy of human knowledge and nothing. It's actually
Nothing.
the otherwise. It is otherwise.
So all of these processes, they require much more careful geological and geotechnical investigations. The geotechnical engineering is required because how are you going to make sure that your slope is stable after you have cut it? And they should also say, well, if we go beyond this angle, then we are not going to be able to control the slope stability or instability. So these kinds of investigations take time. But if you have a project where the prime minister of the country has told you that you have to do it in 2 years, then all caution is thrown to the winds. And we felt sorry for the engineers on the ground because they were under extreme pressure to get the road built in a short period of time. So we have to provide adequate time. We have to provide adequate funding for this kind. Now, the budget must have shot well over 12,000. तो पहले से आप ये सब ढंग से करते तो इतनी गड़बड़ नहीं होती.
So I'm so glad you explain everything so clearly in so simple terms. I think this interview, I would suggest that academic institutions, they should listen to you. I would recommend this interview to them that if they need to understand this certain project, what has gone wrong with this certain project, they need to listen to this conversation. They need to listen to the same words, and which is actually mixed up with proper scientific study, the road study, and everything. So I'm so grateful to you that you could spare time for the audience of the Northeast now on this, and you spoke so eloquently and so beautifully explain everything to us. And I'm really grateful to you, and I hope our audience will also get to understand what is going on in this Fordham project. And my only request is whenever there is some other urgent issues related to environment, I'd request you to again come to agree for an interview.
First of all, I'm very thankful to you for giving me this opportunity because I feel very strongly that many of us neglect the Northeast region. Having traveled in that area, having worked in that area, having made friends in that area, I think it was my duty to respond to your request.
No, no, and you will be surprised to know that such developmental projects are going on here now, and which
I'm
is
aware of.
actually which is jeopardizing our very existence. It's
Yes,
when you see do such irresponsible undertake such irresponsible development projects, you destroy everything. You even destroy the very identity of the communities.
true.
That is what is going to happen here, actually happening here in this northeast region.
See, culture. I believe that the culture of any place evolves from the environment of that place.
Absolutely.
Therefore, if you
Yeah.
destroy that environment, you are going to destroy the culture, you are going to
Yes.
destroy the community. That's
The identity, very identity, because
well,
the culture has grown out of a climatic conditions.
conditions.
Now, if suddenly you want to actually distort it, destroy it, then where is your identity and where is your culture?
True.
So, Supraji, Robiji,
Thank
I'm so
you.
grateful to you. I'll get back again. You must appear on my show. Thank you very
I
much.
will
Thank you
try,
very
but I generally don't speak on issues that I don't know.
no,
People
no,
sometimes ask me to.
I would not invite you to speak on issues which you don't know. And today, anybody would see this conversation, would see this interview, they will know that how, as if you were telling everything as a storyteller tells a story. So I am so thrilled by when I was listening to you. So I'll
Thank
invite
you.
you only to speak on environment related issues, which is your expertise. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Namaste.